The Tigers land another talented defensive back.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We are dapping it up on this Friday with Darrell Dapprich. We'll talk about Auburn basketball's final roster. We'll talk about Sylvester Smith winning the offseason, but we got to start today with Auburn landing another talented defensive back in the 2025 class. Darrell, the Tigers land the commitment from four-star Donovan Starr. He was leaving his official visit, and on the car ride home, I guess he just couldn't stand it. He just wanted to be an Auburn Tiger so bad. He called the staff up and said, "Hey, I want to commit." It sounds like everybody was excited about it.
Great story. I heard that some of the coaching staffs are really high right now, really excited, high on him that he committed. It's a neat story. He's in the car ride home with his mom. He tells his mom, "I just have this feeling I want to commit." She says, "Son, follow your heart." And he does. And he calls the staff and says, "I'm committing." I love his name. Auburn's starting to field some all-name teams on defense. Lockhart sounds like a linebacker. Donovan Starr. I love it. But yeah, Brentwood, Tennessee, beat out Clemson, Missouri, and Tennessee for this kid's services so far. True corner, about 5'10", 175. But what they call in the industry, a fast riser. Auburn felt like they wanted to close the deal quickly with this kid. Some other SEC schools were getting in the mix. And so, man, so far that's three with Dante Core, Devin Williams, and now Starr. And then Auburn's still going after Woodby and Alford. Man, that's a lot of corners in this upcoming class potentially.
Yeah, you could say it would be an incredible cornerbacks class if this keeps going.
Full of stars.
Yeah. Hey, let's go. Yeah, so he is Auburn's 12th member of the class. This moves him up to 10th on 3, 9th on 247. So in this case,
I've always said 247. I'm just sure. How many people you always like to start stuff with Darrell. Could you imagine? I always like to start it with, "I've always said that." Yeah, and then I'll fill in the blank.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So Donovan is the lowest rated 4-star that's committed to Auburn, but who cares? He's a 4-star. He's not a 4-star across the board. He's a 4-star on 247 in the On3 industry ranking. He's a 3-star on On3 ESPN and Rivals. But like you said, he's trending up. He picked Auburn over Clemson and Mizzou. And you and I've talked about it before, how impressive Missouri has been over the last 12 to 18 months. And then, Clemson still is a powerhouse. Say what you want about their head coach not adjusting, but he is. It's still an attractive place. So, and to go and get a guy from Tennessee, I think that's valuable too. Just the state of Tennessee. It seems like Auburn's kind of had some battles that didn't quite go their way up in Tennessee for some guys. So I think that's always refreshing too.
Really had some nice things to say about the way the coaching staff treated his family, that it was a decision. It's just really good to hear some of the reasons why kids choose to commit to a school. And he was here Tuesday through Thursday, or, left yesterday. Again, all that lines, I look at offer lists and who Auburn beats out. Yeah, stars are great. And I want to get some 5-stars like you and Charlie 5-star said. I really want to see that happen. But at the end of the day, I look at other head coaches that are pursuing players that Auburn's getting. Are they coveted by the Kirby Smarts, Dabo Sweeneys, that kind of thing? And then what are the schools recruiting them? Are they big name schools? Are they group of 5?
Right.
Checks all the boxes right here. And again, I think this is a kid that probably when some rankings come out, they get re-rated, you may see him pick up a couple.
I think so. But yeah, this is the quote that this is Jeffrey Lee's article at Auburn Live. Said, quote, "The way they took care of my family, that stands out a lot to me. The people, nobody seems like they're putting a face on or pretending. It seems like everyone here is genuine. They love football and love me as a person." So clearly what this coaching staff was pitching to him he bought it, which is great.
It is. And again, I don't know. I mean, what are your feelings about, I know you love cornerbacks. You love the secondary. I don't think there's ever a time where you feel like a team could have too many defensive backs, but there's only so many slots in the class. Is 5 too many? Or, is there a thought process here that maybe 1 or 2 could move to safety? Or I know you got to rebuild a lot, but defensive back room is pretty stout as it is at Auburn.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder if they're just assuming people are going to leave at some point, and you just get as many talented players at key positions as you can and just kind of let it all work itself out. It's a lot. It is a lot. You got to think some of these guys could possibly play nickel or maybe a free safety at the next level. So like that could be some of it. Like, let's just get as many talented defensive backs as possible. We'll see how to get them on the field later. I think that could be part of it. 5'11", 175. Like, he looks like a corner to me. I can't really see him playing a whole lot of other places. Like, he just eye test wise, a little bit of tape I've watched, he looks like a corner. But you could see other guys possibly moving around in the defensive back room. Like, that wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world.
No, and I guess that's the bottom line is it's a nice problem to have. You worry about that later. When you start accumulating talent, I mean, that's when you get to where you need to be, because there's 2 things that are happening in this case. Number one, you're adding to a recruiting class that's already very significant in a defensive backfield. So you're adding to that. But when you add to that, you're also taking away or keeping somebody like Tennessee or Missouri in conference from getting a player like that. And that's beneficial. It's a win-win.
Yeah, good point. Good point. He was asked if he would take other visits, and he said, probably not. I probably won't take any more visits. I'm locked in. Yeah,
because Illinois was on the radar, and I don't think he's going to go there now. So that's great. I mean, that's a good. It's weird to get that news midweek like that, a midweek visit. You usually see these kind of things drop on a Sunday or Saturday. So nice little pleasant surprise there.
I think so, and they're having a lot of stuff happening on campus today with camps and things like that. So I'm sure it was a big to do. I'm sure they made it. I hope they made a big deal out of it at the camp today, especially with all the coaches and other recruits being out there. So we'll see. Maybe that'll set up a domino for more guys to fall over the next week or so. I mean, I think this is going to be a crazy summer for Auburn recruiting. It might be one of the best ever.
Remember last year, July is when it started to get real, right? The Perry Thompson by the pool, the DeMarcus Riddicks. I mean, it started, and I think Auburn can have that same kind of momentum with Big Cat Weekend, down in the forecast and that kind of thing. So it could get really, really special by the time fall camp opens.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. So obviously that'll be very exciting. It's been an exciting offseason, and I'll tell you why I think Sylvester Smith has won the offseason for Auburn. That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Darrell, can you imagine buying a part for your car, truck, or SUV anywhere other than eBay Motors? We're
pretty fortunate where I work. We got a lot of guys that are very mechanically inclined, maintenance guys. And so for fleet vehicles, we have started to now use eBay Motors for a part here, part there. Hey, get it in, get it quickly, get it on the delivery truck, and let's go. And it's been very beneficial for us to find those little oddball parts here and there.
Yeah, they've got over 122 million parts, so they've got your part. Whatever it is, they've got you covered. It's an easy way to make your car, truck, or SUV the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Darrell, when you look at the offseason that Auburn has had so far, they've knocked it out of the park. They really have. But when you look at the individual players whose stock has gone up the most, Sylvester Smith has to be in that conversation. You've had conversations with folks this week. I've had conversations with folks this week. Heck, Jason Jones, a defensive lineman, came on the show yesterday, and I'm asking about, the newcomers on the defensive line. He's still like, I love Sylvester Smith too. I just got to throw that out there. Anytime you talk to somebody within the program, they pause and say, oh yeah, and also this isn't really what you asked me, but Sylvester Smith is killing it right now. And to me, I think that's just really encouraging.
Yeah, full credit to you for seeing that even last year before the buzz started, and there was something in him that you really liked, that you predicted that he was going to be a fast riser. He was. I didn't have him penciled in as a starter this year. Now he is. You can't keep him off the field. And some of the
back
things,
to the conversation we had with the NFL scout.
Yes,
the Senior Bowl.
Yes, exactly.
He didn't hesitate at all. We're like,
you glowed. You glowed. There was a sheen to you when he said that. I looked over and it was like a halo.
Yeah.
You were so excited. And
I don't know how my head fit through the door that day.
Yeah, you were very modest though. You didn't like go look at me and like stick your chest out. Kudos to you for that.
I agree, NFL scout. I agree.
Yes. But I talked to somebody that that had conversation with someone on the coaching staff that is so high on Sylvester Smith that they're worried about him staying on the field. He hits people so hard. I mean, that's a wonder. I'm not talking about dirty hits. I'm talking about, just comes at you and lays the stinking wood.
Yeah.
That he hits so hard and he's so aggressive. They want to make sure he stays on the field. That's a wonderful problem to have. And, when you have a defense that's set up with a secondary that we feel like is a pretty elite room or a pretty good secondary or strength of the team, and you've got a guy like that that's just laying the wood from the backside.
Yeah.
And then Jaron Thompson comes in and he has gotten high praise. The bookend there at safety, really, I went into the spring thinking it could be a question mark. They went out and got Laquan Robinson. I didn't know where Sylvester Smith slotted in. Now, with Thompson from Texas and Smith getting all these accolades, pretty excited about the secondary. And it's not just the corners. The safeties really are going to bring it as well.
Kind of makes you wonder, like, could they move somebody around? Like, could they move Laquan Robinson around somewhere or somebody like that?
Could to a linebacker position maybe or something like that.
It'd be interesting to see. Be interesting to see for sure. But yeah, I just don't want Sylvester Smith to get overlooked with all this because everybody just mentioned, like, they're all worthy of the attention. There's no question about it. But Sylvester Smith has kind of been what I think is the best case scenario, what you want. These guys who are solid, they're placed solid in their class, and then they don't transfer out. They just wait their turn. And then when it's time for them to perform, they do, and they get developed. It's Jaron Thompson, I think, is going to be a key part of this defense. No question about it. But we want to see as much proof as possible of guys staying in the system, staying in the program, and getting better. And the proof in the pudding of, hey, if you stay here, 1, you'll get better, and 2, you will earn a spot. And I think Sylvester Smith is that guy. I think that's this offseason.
I think that's the blueprint. I really do. I think that's the blueprint for getting to where you want to get to at an elite level.
Yeah.
And that is developing people and not worrying about having to go to the portal all the time, letting guys stay 1-2 years and going ahead and letting them develop. And then they stick around, they're patient, in year 2, year 3, they make a mark. When you build that, that's when I think you really start to see people get to the top of the conference and compete for championships.
Yeah. The future, I mean, the defensive back room this year is exciting. No question about it. But the future is too. I mean, Sylvester Smith still has eligibility, obviously. Kaden Lee will be back next year. Terrence Love will be back next year. Champ Anthony, Caleb Wooden, unless they leave early for the NFL draft. I mean, there's just so much to love about the future of this room. And then there's a million freshmen. You only need 2 of them to really pop to kind of elevate that room. I think Jay Crawford's going to be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, just it's such a good spot to be in when you look at the defensive back room.
It really is. I think that one of the things you mentioned maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago is how do you keep everybody on the roster? How do you keep them from jumping ship? Because there is so many good players in that room, so much talent in that room. Well, it's not easy, especially in this day of NIL and transfer portal. You have to be selling them something. You have to be able to. Now, at some point, you can say, we're not going into the portal anymore to bring in a safety or a corner. We've got it right here on our roster if you stay. That's how you sell that. And when you get to that particular point.
And that might be one of the few rooms where they can do that, where they'll say, hey, we're not going to go to the portal this offseason. Because linebacker, they're probably going to have to. They're about to lose literally half of their room. They'll probably, edge, they won't have to. Defensive line, they're going to have to. Because, I mean, it's like everybody as a defensive lineman is about to be out of eligibility, it seems like, unless you're a true freshman. So there's going to be a few rooms where they're not going to be able to make that pitch, but they will be able to make that the defensive backs. No question. Who would you say has won the offseason?
On the defensive side of the ball or either? Does it matter?
In general.
Ooh, that's a great question. On the defensive side of the ball, I've been hearing a lot of things about the linebackers, particularly Asante, and how he has emerged as that guy that could compete for the tradition of Auburn linebacker. Jason Jones, I think he's emerging on the defensive line, not just because you had him on. I'm seeing a lot of good things about how hard he's working. So I would say those two guys on the defensive side of the ball. And then, the easy ones, Cam Coleman on the offensive side of the ball. There's too much buzz, just way too much buzz to not say what he's done in the offseason as far as winning the offseason.
Yeah, there's going to be somebody on the offensive side of the ball that benefits from Cam Coleman, the extra attention that Cam Coleman's going to draw. And is that a Perry Thompson? Is that Rivaldo? Is it Robert Lewis? I think one of these guys is going to just kind of be showing up every day, and then they're going to be Auburn's number 2 option consistently in most games this season and most game plans this season. And we're going to be a little surprised by how productive they are. There's going to be one, I think, that pops.
Or a very underrated point that somebody made in the Discord this morning is, could it be someone like Jarquez Hunter? Because the passing game gets better, thereby taking the pressure off of the running game and stacking the box and giving them a little bit of room and keeping the defensive line and the linebackers honest. That's another trickle-down effect where the running game could benefit if the receivers start to eat.
Not a bad point. Not a bad point at all. Comment down below. Who do you think has won the offseason? I'm going with Sylvester Smith so far, but you can make the case for a lot of guys on this roster. Speaking of rosters, Auburn basketballs is done. How exciting. We'll discuss that in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Darrell, when you look at it, Auburn adds Miles Kelly. All that becomes official earlier this week, the transfer guard from Georgia Tech. And the roster is set. The roster is set, and it's one of the best, maybe if it probably is the best on paper of any roster Bruce Pearl's had at Auburn.
Yeah, Auburn felt like they needed to address 2 needs going into the offseason for basketball. One was at the point guard position, and they did that with J.P. Pegues, 18 points a game from Furman, high-level player. Yeah. And then they thought they were probably going to have to get a backup point guard because both point guards left. And I'll talk about they addressed that differently, which is really ironic. And then the 4 position where Jalen Williams leave, I think Auburn feels like Chaney Johnson and Jaheim Howard. There's this misconception that you're going to go out and get a 4 that steps right in and gives you the stats that Williams did, and you don't. It's one of those deals where it could be production by the masses, where it's Howard and Chaney Johnson together. If you get 16 points, 8 rebounds from the 4 position, and it's 2 guys doing that, so what? It's still production, right? And then instead of getting that backup point guard through the JUCO ranks or the Ivy Curry kid or Duke Miles, they went and get Miles Kelly, who's a phenomenal player, 6'6", a great rebounding guard, Zach. And that's the thing Auburn really, really loves. He can play the 2 or the 3. He's kind of a hybrid, but he can rebound the basketball, a scorer, 14 points a game. Well, what you can do then is slide him to the 2, and then Denver Jones becomes your backup point guard. And don't sleep on Tahad Pettiford, who's looking good so far in early season workouts, to play that guard position. Another combo guard. You can play the 1 or the 2. So bottom line is there are 2 things that jump out at me when I think of this Auburn roster. Number 1, veteran, experienced, 10 stinking seniors. That's unbelievable. That is very, very hard to get in this day and age of college basketball. The second adjective I would use is versatile. They've got a lot of guys, Zach, that can play multiple positions. The word hybrid and combo, it just keeps coming up in all these positions. So you got a guy like Janai Broome who can play the 4 or the 5. You got guys that can play the 3 or the 4, the 2 and the 3, the point guard and the shooting guard. Yeah. That makes it very, very dangerous, the versatility. I love this roster. I like the way it's constructed. I think it's one of the best that Bruce Pearl has had at Auburn on paper. I think the one question mark that I would have is how does he utilize this roster? It might be time for Bruce Pearl to shrink and shorten the bench a little bit. And maybe going from 11 and 12 guys getting 10 minutes or more a game last year to 8 or 9. and give guys like Broome and Denver Jones and Pegues and Chad Baker-Mazara heavy minutes.
Yeah.
That might be the blueprint. But with this roster and 10 seniors and the versatility of this roster, you can do that. You can absolutely do that. And that's what I love. Foul trouble, that kind of stuff, not going to come into play. I really am excited about this roster. I'm really high on Miles Kelly. I think it's going to be very hard to keep him out of the starting lineup. We'll see, but I think it's going to be very hard not to slot him in. Him and Chad Baker-Mazara, I think it's going to be a battle in camp.
You mentioned 10 seniors. Does it feel like Auburn is pushing all the chips to the center of the table and going all in this year? Because that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I mean, because you get guys like Dylan Cardwell and Janai Broome that come back. They didn't come back to finish middle of the SEC. They came back because they were sold that this team could be special. You go out and get a Pegues or Kelly. Look, there's going to be a massive rebuilding job for Bruce Pearl next year. And I think to your point, he doesn't care. All the chips are in on the table this year. Let's go get it this year. We'll worry about 2025 then. We've got 2 freshmen coming in. He's got a recruiting class, I think, the year after that's going to be very elite. We'll worry about that then. Right now, after what happened this year, where I think they had this past year where they really were coming off an SEC title, SEC tournament title, felt like they could make a deep run in the tournament and didn't. Bad taste in their mouth. Let's go get it. Let's get this fixed. All in on 24-25.
Yeah. I mean, you see an opportunity to win a championship. You got to do it. You have to do it. No,
you don't bring guys back. It's not fair to Broome. It's not fair to Cardwell or any of these, or Miles Kelly, who transfers to Auburn for 1 year to do what? I mean, he knows he's not coming in and playing 30 minutes a game. That's why this misconception that Auburn was getting beat on the recruiting trail was such a misnomer. It's hard to sell kids to come in off the bench and only play 20 minutes where they can go somewhere else and play 30 because Auburn's roster was so stacked. Kelly bought into that.
Right. I mean, if you would have told me at the beginning of all this, okay, your potential backup guard is going to be Miles Kelly. It's like, yeah,
you take that. He could have went a lot of places, Zach, and started immediately and been promised 30 minutes a game. Why did he come to Auburn? Because he wants to compete for a championship. Yeah,
and he'll get the opportunity to do so. Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Follow me on X, DAP6410. As you mentioned, we've got an article out on Auburn Daily on the basketball roster. Going to put one out in the next couple days, a way too early look at perhaps the Auburn 2-deep, just projecting, predicting, that kind of thing in Auburn football, the 2-deep depth chart. And then you can follow. I get you on Wednesdays and Fridays, even though we did a little show yesterday out of the norm, but Wednesdays and Fridays with my man, Zach.
Yes, please like the video, please subscribe, and we will see you on Monday. This has been Locked On Auburn.